Nobody quite knows what Ruben Amarim has got in mind for our midfield. The dual tens is one thing, and one thing I'm actually very interested to see. We've seen strikers looking isolated for a long time playing the 4-3-3 systems that we've seen, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 at Manchester United now for a while. And I'm wondering, does this sort of dual behind the striker number 10s, does it change that? And does it lead to other problems that would require fixing down the line? I'm very interested in seeing how that sort of shapes up. An all-action sort of manager demanding the kind of pivot that I've seen him deploy at Sporting is not something we're used to. Now that the dust has sort of settled on his first training session, the big question everyone is asking following the reveal, if you like, that it's probably going to be 3-4-3, is how he's going to go with in the midfield. Amorim sets up with a double pivot. Two central midfielders playing flat, if you want to sort of visualize it a little bit, alongside each other. There isn't necessarily one higher or lower. They will move around, obviously, and at different times one probably is higher and one probably is lower, but essentially their roles are flat. They'll play alongside each other. They'll be tasked with completing every single role across the pitch. They are all action midfielders in the modern sense. Both midfielders who play there will need to have quality in probably three key areas. They'll need to be defensively stable. They'll need to be able to progress the ball, and they'll need to be able to cover into the wide areas, probably behind the advancing wing-backs. Now, Amorim doesn't just field two midfielders that can do it all, because it's probably an impossibility that you'll find those three sets of perfect traits in just two midfielders. So you have to find a balance. One might be better at progressing, one might be better at the coverage. You kind of get what you're looking for as a complete package across the two. One of the midfielders tends to be a little bit more of a physical presence than the other. Paulinho and Ugarte, two examples of that. Players who focus on ball winning, primarily, breaking up play, protecting the back line. The other midfielder would then be the one that's expected to progress the ball a little bit, operate more of what people like to call box-to-box. They are the creative distributor. They will excel in ball distribution. They will excel in driving the ball through the middle of the park, probably dribbling. I was going to say dribbling and linking. I come up with drinking. Brian Robson would have been very good in this midfield. Anyway, the dribbling and linking of the play, linking it into the attack. And that's exactly what they are. Under Amorim, this role was probably best associated with Matheus Nunes before he moved to Wolves. Now, I think Amorim is likely thinking this is a big part of how his team's going to do, because he's got several options in here that could do well, that they're going to have slightly different personalities depending on how they all shape up. And it's not just as simple as selecting two and leaving it as that, because there's a large selection of suitors, large selection of form, personal circumstances and all the rest of that. And every single one of them actually has got a fair claim to say that they deserve to start for Manchester United at the moment, which is not something we've had for a while. So let's have a look at who could start. Now, the easy one, I think, because he's in form and because he knows the system better than anybody else in a red shirt, is Manuel Ugarte. So he's, of course, the easy one. And he's probably going to be one of the first names on the team sheet for Amorim at weekend and possibly beyond. We've just signed him. He's starting to come good. He's playing with confidence. And after that little slow start, he's managed to rack up 11 appearances for the club. And in that, he's had quite a few good games, and actually those good games have come towards, Ruud's tenure, if anything. Previously under Amorim, he played more or less every single possible minute. He joined PSG in 2023. He was one of the hottest midfield prospects in Europe at the time, and PSG's style didn't really suit him, which brings us to the present day, where he finds himself potentially looking at a new play style that suits him down to the ground. He could be the golden child of the physical ball-winning presence that Amorim clearly greatly desires. Next up, Casemiro. I can't believe I'm still talking about Casemiro like this, because there's times that we've done content where we've gone, he's finished. He's done, man, he's finished. And he does prove us wrong. Not continually, but, he does prove us wrong. He's had some absolute clangers. Towards the back end of last season, there was some big games where you're like, wow. I don't know if he thinks he's at Power League here or what, but he's sorted it out. Has he sorted it out because he's playing alongside Ugarte? Maybe. But he's somehow worked hard enough to recover the form that we saw from him in his first season. He is 32 now. He's absolutely in the twilight of his career. But he's on a good run of form this season. He's appeared 16 times. He looked way off the pace in the Liverpool game, where he was obviously hooked at half-time for Collier. But in the last month or so, he's really stepped up, and he's a massive danger from set plays, probably our biggest danger from set plays. And he's actually scored some ridiculous goals already this season. So Casemiro really looked good under Ruud alongside Ugarte, who also looked good. With the slow reintroduction of Mainoo expected, is that the go-to midfield pairing that we're going to see this weekend? Or have they flattered to deceive? Casemiro's first season with us highlighted just how much we required a player of his quality in midfield. In training, Amorim had Casemiro as the physical, seemingly more defensive presence of the two midfielders. No surprise there when he's partnered with Mainoo. But Amorim demands endless running from his midfielders. Does Casemiro still have the ground coverage in his locker, or can that be mitigated a little bit by playing an Ugarte alongside him? Evidence would seem to suggest that Casemiro doesn't have that in his locker right now. Could he still feature once a week? Could he feature knowing he's maybe going to feature for an hour? I think there's a lot in Casemiro still, and I would like to see him played frequently, and go out on his sword at the end of this season with his head held high after, 2 out of 3 good years as a Manchester United player. I think that'd be befitting of the career that he's had. Mainoo. Now, this is one that we saw getting a little bit of personal attention from the manager. And his slow start to the season hasn't really done him any favours, especially with an appointment of a new manager. He was unfathomable last season. It made him a bit of a talent that you should probably look to build on for the next decade. That wasn't hype. He was coming in and delivering. His hangover from last season has held him back a little bit this year. But last season, we saw him become a crucial player. He featured 24 times in the league. I think that was basically in a row as well. 6 times in the FA Cup, twice in the Champions League. He basically won us the FA Cup. Amorim's gonna see Mainoo as that box-to-box role, the creator role, the progress the ball role, the get on the ball and make things happen kind of role. And I think his game is probably leaning towards more of a 10 than a 6, if anything. But I think he can do the progressing role as an 8. He worked very well in that role in training, it looked like, partnering alongside Casemiro. Would he maybe suit playing alongside Ugarte more and let Ugarte be the legs and he can be the little sprinkle on top? And then we've got Christian Eriksen. Christian Eriksen has rocketed up the pecking order this season. He's got 4 goals, 3 assists in 13 games. But the amount of chances he's creating is an absolute disgrace. The amount of times I've done the player ratings and I've gone, he came off the bench and he completed all of his passes. His pass completion this season is quite frankly ridiculous. We need to question whether he's got the legs to operate in Amorim's system. Or do we? Because I think we all know the answer to that. No, he's not. Is there room for him in Amorim's midfield? Might surprise us and play in one of the dual 10s. I'd be very surprised if he played back-to-back games as one of the more deep-lying 6s or 8s. But when he plays, he looks a step above everybody. When he plays, the level of quality, maturity, composure that he displays on the ball is quite frankly ridiculous. I think that there'll be a requirement when we want to keep the ball. He'll feature as one of the dual 10s where his creative force can be tasked properly and winning us games rather than being some sort of a box-to-box or even defensive-minded role. I can't see him featuring week in, week out. but I would have no qualms with seeing him, especially if he was partnered with someone like an Ugarte. If it was him and Mainoo, I'd be like, or even him and Casemiro might be like, are we expecting to have all the ball here? Is that what we're saying? Right. Because if we're expecting to play a team that's just going to completely sit off against us and leave us to it, okay, there's a case to be made that those two could work in midfield. Anfield away, suicide. Etihad away, suicide. Played alongside Ugarte, though, in a maybe regular West Ham at home sort of game. I'm not saying I'm against it. 4 players there, all with a legitimate claim to be a starter for Manchester United. I think the safest bet is Ugarte. And I think with Christian Eriksen's physical limitations and Kobbie Mainoo's injury return, I would bet the house on Casemiro featuring alongside Ugarte against Ipswich this weekend. But it's not an easy decision to make. And it's going to be very pivotal for us. And it might not be a permanent situation. It might be the best tool for the best job each week. And it might change. But it's going to be fascinating to see because there's genuine options there. There isn't genuine options in a lot of areas for United. But there's genuine options here. And I'm interested to know you guys' thoughts as well. So you guys, get me in the comments. Who do you think? Your average game at home. And then talk to me about those, top 3 or 4 teams away. What should you go to? See you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.